When I took over the UAW, I mean, I told our membership, there's two words we need to eliminate, and it's can't and fear, because they would use fear to make sure that we didn't. You've got to have action. You've got to be able to do things to also prove that, we can win.
Fakto at Manifesta. Shawn Fain, Peter Mertens.
Welcome. I'm here in Studio Fakto with Shawn Fain, and for those who don't know Shawn Fain comes from the United States, here in Belgium to Manifesta, and Shawn Fain is the president of the United Automobile Workers. You were an electrician, and in which way you decided to become an electrician? Was it a natural thing to do, or was your father an electrician? How come?
When I graduated high school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. My parents, always, everybody in those times pushed people to go to college. That was always the path. I went to college for about a year and a half. I didn't do well. I really didn't know what I was passionate about at that time. And so I ended up getting into an apprenticeship as an electrician, and that really opened a whole new world to me. In that time frame, I was in construction, so construction was very slow, and so I endured a lot of layoffs and unemployment, and it really impassioned me to do better and to do more for people, because when you see how the unemployment system in America works and different programs, and you see the right always trying to attack those programs, it really emboldened me to get more active and become more involved in the union movement, and from that point I hired in at Chrysler, and the rest is history.
The rest is history. You're still writing history, but at one point you became president of the United Automobile Workers. Was it always been a dream to be president of the United Automobile, or did it come on your path?
When I hired in at Chrysler in 1994, 30 years ago, I just wanted to be able to be home and support my family, and so really had no ambition to be president of the International Union. As I got involved in my local union, I started running committees, and then I ran for election and became a steward or a committee person and a shop chairperson. And as things kept happening in our work lives, plants were closing. The union wasn't really fighting. It was very complacent, and we had what I call a company union. The company and the union were working way too closely together, and it did not benefit the workers. It benefited one side, and so that really, as I just kept progressing in my career, I ended up taking on more responsibility, and then ended up we were able to get direct elections in the UAW for the first time. The way the system was set up previous to that, a reformist really couldn't run against the faction that was in power for 80 years because they had control of everything. So having a direct election is the reason why I'm sitting here today.
And then you became president of the UAW, and it was not a long time before the first big conflict. How was that experience? Because you were nearly elected president, and then there was this big, fight against the big three.
I went through a runoff in the election, so it took a lot longer to get the election finished. And so when they declared me the winner, it was March 26th, 2023. And Monday, March 27th, 2023, we had a bargaining convention going on to prepare for bargaining. So I had to run a convention that I had no planning with, no input in. And so we had roughly 90 days to prepare for Big Three bargaining at that point. And so I had to put a team in place, and we just really focused and went to work and started devising how we wanted to go about this, how we wanted to do things differently. And so really, at that point, my 28 years of experience in this union and what I thought didn't work well was trying to figure out how do we make it work for the workers and put the workers in power. And so that really was the first thing we tried to do was unify the membership and let the members drive this movement.
You also said it on your speech on the main stage of Manifesta. You said it's important in the union to let also the workers have to be in control of the union. There has to be workers leaders of the union. Why it's so important, and how have you seen the difference with your approach to do that?
Yeah, it's still a work in progress, because we've been so accustomed in our union to basically almost an authoritarian type of leadership at the top of our union, because they typically, when the president or a vice president spoke, everyone was just supposed to follow, and they were somewhat untouchable. You couldn't really have access to them. So I really tried to, since I've been in the presidency, to give members access to me, doing Facebook Lives, visiting every conference, trying to speak at different conferences and interacting with workers. And with the contract campaign, I mean, We had never ran a contract campaign before in the UAW, and so it was really important, though, because it was a very divided House when I was elected, because we just went through our first direct election. So there were people that weren't happy, there were people that were happy. We were hoping to have 14 actions across the country before the contract deadline, and we had about 2 months to do that. And when we asked the members to just plan actions and plan rallies or practice pickets or do red shirt days or in solidarity, there were over 140 actions held. And that to me was a great testament to how, when you just trust the membership, you give them the keys, they run with it. And so it was definitely effective.
You won this big strike, and how important was it to win again as a trade union? How important are all these victories for the whole working class? Was it only important for automobile workers, or did other sectors get inspired by?
Initially, when we started, we just were trying to focus on what our plan was, what our strategy was, and I believe with our communication strategy, in the past, in bargaining, in contract negotiations, the leadership of the UAW would always tell everyone, do not talk to the media, we have to have complete silence. It was basically a blackout bargaining. No one knew what was going on except the people involved in it. And so we wanted to keep the membership engaged with what was happening. So we were doing Facebook Lives every week. We were doing updates of where bargaining was. And the interesting part of that was the entire public started tuning in, and then the media started tuning into it. And so, at the point that we were calling plants to go out on strike, the media was airing our Facebook Lives, so millions of people were watching. And I think the important part of that was, anytime we speak, I don't just speak about the UAW or about union workers, I speak about all working class people, because the reality, all working class people in America were living, like many in the world, with the wealth disparity that we have. Working class people have been left behind, and union or not, workers were fed up with wages being suppressed and not having adequate benefits and struggling to get by paycheck to paycheck. So it really, I think all of that, it brought everyone into our fight, and it was never more evident by the polling that was done during our strike. 75% of Americans said they supported us in that fight, which is a great thing to hear.
It's a great thing to hear also here in Europe, because there is some sentiment in Europe, in the European media, like in United States, some way there is no working class, there is only middle class, and then there is United Automobile Workers, and there is Shawn Fain, and there is class struggle in the United States. And you're using proudly the word working class again. How important is that?
It's simple to me in my mind, but I just believe there's two classes of people. There's either the rich and there's everybody else. And if you're not rich, you're working class. If you don't own your business and you don't have, no matter what happens with that business, if you don't have a safety net there, then you're a working class person. Most of us are in that category. So that's, you talk about the 99% and the 1%, and things have gotten way out of whack in this world with the runaway wealth, with a few at the top, and everybody else is paying the price for it. So that's something that we talk a lot about, and every time I speak, I talk about the working class. And when I talk about that, I always say, union or not, it's if you work for a living, we're in this fight together.
Concept of union in the United States is becoming more popular in general, or is it difficult to say? Or are you seeing a new generation of people joining the union, or depends on sector, or what's your vision?
Throughout our fight, we started getting people that were signing union cards and sending, wanting to organize in non-union auto plants, and that was without us even asking. People were just searching us out. So it was a great sign, and we organized a Volkswagen plant in Tennessee in the South, which we have never been able to organize a plant in the South, in southern United States in my lifetime. So it was a major win, a major turning point, and I think too, when we won and bargained for our successful contract, a lot of workers saw that, and right away Toyota, Hyundai, Honda started, they gave their employees 10-11% pay increases. They reduced their progression to full pay from 8 years to 4 years. They were following our pattern. And so the interesting part of that was, right away I said, we're going to claim that. They're doing this because of what we bargained for, so we called it the UAW bump, and we started telling workers, you are welcome. That's what UAW stands for. And the companies did that because they want to try to keep the workers from organizing. So, but we always tell them, prior to us bargaining that contract, what was your last raise? For many of them it was 25 cents, in the last 3 years, or nothing, or they're taking away their health care benefits. So it definitely had a bigger impact overall, but and I would just say it's not so much auto industry or by the sector, it's really just, I think workers are fed up, and I think the younger workers and the younger people in our country I'm very proud of, because they see that there's not a good path for them in the future, and I think they're seeing that the way to have a decent standard of living is by joining a union. So I think we're going to see that increase as we keep going. When we started that, I mean, there was some resistance to that initially. Some people didn't want to do it. Some of our leaders weren't on board with it. But by the time we had a few big rallies, you could see the passion and the fight and the membership, and it just grew, and everyone wanted to be a part of it. And so by the time, like I said, by the time we got to the contract expiration, everyone was together. So, and we knew this: we either come together and we fight together, or we divide and we lose. And that's the big issue going on in this world right now. Is the wealthy have been united for decades. They divide the working class people and over whatever issue they can, and then and they continue to extract more wealth while we continue to suffer and struggle to get by. So we got to continue to grow that.
You already announced the 1st of May campaign of 28, if I'm well informed. So we're 24 now, it's in 4 years. And what's the objective to launch a campaign in 4 years? What are you trying to obtain with the 1st of May 28?
I speak about this a lot. During the COVID pandemic, for all the horrible things and all the lives that were lost, there was a good lesson in that, in America at least. And we saw it with the fast food industry, where workers at McDonald's and Burger King and other places, were making $10, $12 an hour, and they were saying basically, screw this, I'm not going to work and risking my life to make hamburgers. The companies started raising their pay to $20, $25 an hour and up. That to me was a great lesson in the power that we have as working class people when we withhold our labor. First off, we need time to plan and time for people to get contracts aligned or be able to take action, get those things aligned to how we can do it and work across borders and everything. So we wanted to give a realistic target, and but our ultimate goal is to build solidarity, labor solidarity in our country, but also globally, because we can win all the fights we want in America, but at the end of the day, if we don't raise the standard and we don't work across the globe to have good standards everywhere. The global corporate community, they've been unified for years. We're taking on global corporations. They'll just keep, they'll close a plant in Brussels and they'll move it to Mexico or Turkey or wherever, and so there's always going to be that threat, in driving that race to the bottom. So we have to figure out how do we make this happen, from a global standpoint. So really, May Day 2028 for us was about building solidarity. It's our job as labor unions to lead this movement and to unite all working class people, union or not, and then come together and take action. So that's the mission.
All the system says to working class people and to ordinary people that they are small and they have no power at all, and the whole purpose of the unionizing is to make people more powerful and to make people believe in themselves. So how do you do that task? What's your opinion about that, to empower people? How important is it for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, when I took over the UAW, I mean, I told our membership, there's two words we need to eliminate, and it's can't and fear, because all I ever heard from my 28 years prior to that was why we can't bargain better contracts, why we can't ask for these things, why we can't demand these things. They would use fear to make sure that we didn't. Organized labor, brings hope to workers, and you've got to have action. You've got to be able to do things to also prove that, we can win. And, I spoke a lot, throughout our Big Three campaign, of my faith. And I talked about, Scripture says, faith the size of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. And we moved a mountain with that contract. We moved a mountain by organizing in the South where people said it couldn't be done. We've made believers out of people, and so you're not always going to win. That's just not reality. But when workers see a change in philosophy and they see a change in direction in their union and they see success that they haven't seen in our lifetime, people want to be a part of that. I go back to my grandparents' generation that went through the Great Depression. I mean, they lost everything. They were destitute. They were able to migrate north in America, and they got jobs at General Motors and Chrysler. It changed their lives. They lived what we called back then the American dream. That American dream's been dead for decades now, but and we have to revive that. And I use that moment in time for my grandparents' generation, with the Great Depression. I really compare that to the times we're in now, because after the recession and after the COVID pandemic, I really believe this is a generation-defining moment where we can really, if we focus on the right things and we unify people, I think this could be the same type of moment.
I'm going to ask a question about your T-shirt, Shawn. no, not this one. You have another you have many T-shirts, without doubt. But one T-shirt says "Eat the rich."
Huh?
Okay. What does it mean, eat the rich?
Basically we want to take our lives back, and we talk about the wealth disparity the wealth inequality in this globe. In America, I talk about the fact that 3 families have as much wealth as the bottom 50% of Americans. I mean, that is...
Oh, wait, 3 families?
3 families.
As the bottom 50%?
As the bottom 50%, half of America.
Half.
3 families have as much wealth as the bottom 50% of Americans. And that is criminal. And that is a crisis. And there's a reason why that's happening, because we perform the work, we do the work, we generate those profits, but workers keep getting left behind, and they keep chasing, driving a race to the bottom. We should be mastering technology to where when technology improves, we should be making workers work less and not have to work as hard and still have a good quality of life. But instead, the corporate world uses technology advances to eliminate jobs and make the remaining workers work harder and longer for less. And so when we talk about eat the rich, we have to turn this around. What I would say is they've been eating our lunch for 40 years, and it's time that we turn the table on them and we eat the rich. It's our turn.
Some would argue that as a union, you should stick with salaries and only the wage issues, and talking about a just transition, talking about climate, talking about the rich as a class, or talking about Palestine. That are not union issues. Some would argue. What do you say to this kind of thinking?
Well, I always find it funny when the rich complain. Whenever working class people rise up, the rich always start talking about class warfare. But what they don't talk about is class warfare has been going on in this world for 40 years, and they've been taking everything quietly while they have us fighting over race or LGBTQ plus issues or over immigration. They want to point a finger at someone else or something else as the reason why your life isn't getting better, because they don't want workers to focus on the reality that corporate greed is why your life is struggle. And when it comes to situations like the situation in Gaza and with Palestinians, we've been very vocal about that as a union, and I believe we should. The UAW has always stood for peace and stood for humanity, and we're going to continue to weigh in on those issues. And if someone doesn't like the fact that we're going to speak about those things, I don't know what to tell them. But we're going to be there. We have to fight. Everything we fight for is about humanity, our jobs, and working class power. All of that is about having a better human race, and everyone's sharing in the wealth and the fruits of their labor. And unfortunately, only a handful of people are taking all the wealth, and they're leaving everybody else to struggle to get by.
I have one last question, Shawn, and that is, if you see the world, there's a lot of problems, there's a lot of wars, there is a lot of misery in this, there's a lot of hate too. If you see this world, the hope, where do you see the hope? Where the hope in your heart comes from? Where are the signs of hope in these times for you?
To me, the signs of hope are just seeing what we've witnessed in the last year and a half. I mean, just seeing people come together, and as the rich and the wealthy, the corporate class try to divide us, they'll use religion, they'll use anything they can. But I always say this, in America, the conservative class, the Republican Party that's very right wing, they love to hold up a Bible and they love to wrap themselves in a flag and talk about the love of country, but everything that they put forward is against all those things. And I say this a lot about talking about religion. Any religion I know of in this world is founded in the principle of love of your fellow human being. When you see a disaster, a hurricane hit, or something, an emergency or a crisis, no one sits around and says, "Are you a right-wing person? Are you this? Are you a union person or not?" People come together because they feel compassion for people who are suffering, and they want to fix that, and so they want to help. All human beings, I believe, are decent, and they want to see a better world. Love of humanity, it's built into us as humans. I see the things we've done recently with some of our actions. I see people coming together. Coming over here and just meeting people I've never met before, and people reach out with love, and that is the world I see, and that's the world we need to see more of, and quit listening to the people that just want to preach division and preach fear, and as a world we tend to focus sometimes on things, the negative things, and we lose focus of all the great things that are going on, and so we really need to get our focus in the right places.
Thank you, Shawn Fain. Really, and thanks to be here in Studio Fakto. Thanks to be here in Manifesta, because I'm sure your presence also with your comrades here in Manifesta makes also Manifesta a little bit a better place, and I hope you will continue to organize those people who moves mountains.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
It's been a great experience, and it's been an honor to be here. I mean, the honor's mine, so I appreciate all the conversations we've had, and continue to work together.
We will. So,
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.